This is a Fox 11 News special. In the world of aviation, there isn't anyone quite like Clay Lacy. And if anyone was ever born to fly, it was this man.
And I knew then that that's what I wanted to do. And that's all I've ever done.
His life's resume reads like an aviator's fairy tale. Commercial airline pilot, military pilot, test pilot, world record setter, air race champion, aviation business owner, and even helped film flying scenes in more than 50 films.
There he is! Get him, Mike! Get him!
Tonight, we spend some time getting to know a man who took his love of flying and created a lifetime of adventure and success, walking the tarmac and reminiscing with the man Neil Armstrong called an all-around master of the air. Clay Lacy grew up in Wichita, Kansas, nicknamed the air capital of the world. And even as a young child, Clay was captivated by flying.
Well, when I was quite young, I used to see the airplanes fly over town with 5 or 6. I was very fascinated. When I was 7, my mother took me out to the airport and I think for $3 got a ride in a staggered wing beach. And I remember I looked down and saw how clean the town looked and how much freedom it seemed you had in the airplane, and I knew then that that's what I wanted to do. And that's all I've ever done.
He started taking flying lessons when he was 12, and by the time he was 19, he had already accumulated 1,500 hours of flying time. Believe it or not, that got him a job with United Airlines here in Los Angeles.
Boy, I was lucky. I came from Kansas, young guy in Kansas, and I came to United Airlines. DC-3 was old in those days, they felt. The DC-3 was 15 years old. And I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And my first trip was where we flew by today, Santa Barbara. But I loved it. United Airlines was a great company to work for.
You know what's interesting to me, if I was sitting on a DC-3 and I saw a 19-year-old kid in a pilot's uniform getting into the cockpit, I think I'd be a little worried. What was that like? Tell me.
Well, I never thought much about it. My biggest problem was that the flight attendants all had to be 21 years old. They were all older than I was, and I was so shy. You get a little Kansas boy that missed out on some good opportunities, bro.
Clay joined the Air National Guard during the Korean War, where he was sent to Air Force pilot training. It was there he found his love of jets.
Well, the first jets I flew were military jets in the Air Force and in the Air National Guard back in the 50s. And you could only take maybe one person with you, and it had to be someone in the military. So when the Learjet came along, 1964, it had the same performance as far as it would climb as high or higher, fly the same speed.
In the early development of Lear jets, Clay became great friends with Bill Lear. On one of their first meetings, Clay's knowledge and ideas impressed Lear so much that he was invited again and again to return to the Learjet factory in Wichita.
Years ago in 1965, I remember Bill Lear put a sign up outside the Dallas airport. He rented a billboard where the passengers came out of the airline terminal. It said, "Welcome to Dallas. Your competition's been here and left in his Learjet." Well, he was ahead of his time with that sign, but it's true today.
Bill Lear wanted to make Learjet a household name, and Van Nuys Airport near Hollywood was the place to do it.
When I was manager of sales here, he called me over to the Beverly Hills Hotel one day and said, he took the Beverly Hills phone book, and he said, "Anyone that you think would talk about the Lear, give them a ride, whether you think they'll buy one or not." He says, "I'll pay you for taking them up." He said, "I want them to talk about the Lear."
Hollywood fell in love with the Learjet. Big names like John Travolta, Johnny Carson, and Frank Sinatra.
I have flown Frank Sinatra many times, and Dean Martin, and Joy Bishop. But I've taken Frank down to Mexico a few times, and always admired him for being so kind and gracious to young kids and giving out autographs. And I said, "You must really get tired." He said, "Yeah, I do." But he said, the day they quit asking, he said, "That'll be a worse day."
Clay Lacy became the pilot to the stars.
I had the opportunity to fly almost everyone in Hollywood in those days because the Lear was the first little corporate jet in town, and everyone wanted to fly in it.
Actor Danny Kaye took his love of flying and the Lear jet to another level.
Danny Kaye was a real pilot. He really he wanted to be a professional, as professional and as good as he could be.
He invested in the distributorship after Clay impressed him on a demonstration flight. The two of them ended up flying all over the world together.
I flew hundreds of hours with Danny, and we flew on these UNICEF trips 4 times, raising money for UNICEF at Halloween time. And the last trip we went to, I believe, 65 cities in 5 days. Danny would get out and talk to children and have 100 to 150 young people at the airport. He'd get out and tell them about UNICEF.
Throughout his career, Clay used flying to raise money for children's charities. In 1988, Clay set a new around-the-world speed record with a 36-hour, 54-minute, 15-second flight in a plane dubbed Friendship 1. This record-setting flight raised $530,000 for children's charities worldwide.
If someone offered us another lap right now, we'd take it.
Coming up, Clay Lacy grows his own business, breaks more records, and makes movies.
Go easy on me, okay? It's my first time.
I just want to seriously say I have a small fear of flying.
I'm proud that I've been in aviation over 65 years and still doing it, still flying, and I had the opportunities I've had, the luck to set round the world speed record and win the national air races, and so lucky me. And
Lucky Me, the title of a book by Stacy Gear about the life and flights of veteran aviator Clay Lacy. The foreword is written by another famous pilot, Neil Armstrong.
Neil is just one of the greatest test pilots ever. Before he was in the space program, before he was an astronaut, he was a test pilot, flew the X-15, which was an airplane that would go Mach 7, I believe it went. And he had a couple of very hairy experiences. He always did the right thing. He was on a test bed for the lunar lander, and he was only about 150 feet when some of the retro rockets went out and the thing turned 90 degrees. And he was quick enough to eject out of it, open his chute, swung once, hit the ground. They couldn't have picked a better man to be the first man to the moon because of the way he handled it afterwards. Wonderful guy.
Clay started Clay Lacy Aviation with just one rented Lear jet and 2 full-time pilots, while still working for United Airlines in 1968. There wasn't a lot of competition in charter jets in those days, which put Clay in the right place at the right time.
Well, there were other companies too on the East Coast and things, but I was in on the leading edge of jet charter, and that was a great time, which I really enjoyed, being on the leading edge of business jets, and it's certainly been a good ride. I've had a lot of fun. I feel, though, that I haven't done that much to advance or help aviation, but I've certainly been on the user end of it, and I believe we did kind of set the model for a lot of people about what service was about.
That reputation for exceptional service helped Clay Lacy Aviation flourish. In 1969, Clay bought his first Lear jet.
But it did start with one airplane, and I built this facility in 1980, and prior to that I was renting a hangar. So 1980, we had about 10 airplanes, And now we manage and operate over 60. And with one of these airplanes, they can do as much in 2 days as they can do on the airline in 8 days.
Today, the Van Nuys Airport has more business jets than any other airport in the world. It is just ahead of Teterboro in New Jersey.
The business flying, you can see that it really helps. It helps the world, it helps our country, helps Los Angeles. These airplanes bring people from out of town or out of country to town here to do business deals.
As much as Clay loves business aviation, it's just the tip of the iceberg as far as what he has accomplished. As a test pilot, he flew the first flights on 5 airplanes, including one known as the Pregnant Guppy.
And then on test flying, I've never done a lot of test flying, but I have made first flights on 5 airplanes, and including the Pregnant Guppy airplane. It was built to carry Saturn boosters, put men on the moon. In the 60s, we flew that right out of Van Nuys Airport here in September 1962. At the time, it was considered the world's largest airplane.
It was a funny looking aircraft, wasn't it?
It's kind of strange looking, yes.
But fun to fly nonetheless.
Well, I don't know, it's fun to fly. People ask me frequently, what's your airplane do you like to fly the best? I always say it depends on what job you're doing. If you're going to carry a Saturn booster, you better have a Guppy.
And while Clay was busy as a pilot for United and running his own charter business, he managed to find time to fly his P-51 Mustang number 64 in every unlimited class air race from 1964 to 1972.
Well, I've had a lot of fun. I won the national air races in 1970 with my P-51.
It's a good looking aircraft.
Yeah, it's a nice looking airplane. And I won some other races. 1971 was a good year for me. I've set a few other records. It's not something I've chased, the records. I've never chased them, but once in a while when I would think about it, I was going to make a flight that I was pretty sure was going to go fast, I would file for a record.
Clay captured worldwide attention when he and business partner Alan Paulson flew a 4-engine DC-7 in the California 1,000-mile air race.
Maybe I should take that G-meter over here. The big airplane, it's hard to tell how many G's you're pulling without really looking at it. You always get that feeling you're pulling more than you really are. How about handing me the G-meter and I'll put it over here on my glare shield.
They finished 6th, beating more than a dozen other fighter aircraft. People throughout aviation call the feat remarkable. No Y2K jitters for Clay. In another remarkable flight, he rang in the new millennium by flying along the international date line in a Boeing 727. Clay piloted 40 guests cruising from Southern California by way of Hawaii and Midway Island, passing into January 1st, 2000, while it was still 4 a.m. in Los Angeles, before landing an hour later on Midway Island to wait another 24 hours to ring in the new year on land. Coming up, Clay Lacy, the filmmaker.
Watch out, watch out!
They are familiar images these days, shots of airplanes from the sky. But what you may not know is most likely the man behind the camera is Clay Lacy.
Yeah, they're almost all mine. And in the last 35 years, well, it's been more than that. I've been doing it for over 40 years.
Clay Lacy helped revolutionize the way aerial photography was being done.
The Lear was new. It was the first little civilian airplane that could keep up with the airliners. And Douglas and Boeing were still trying to take their pictures from a B-25, which went, a little over 200 miles an hour. And the airliner, DC-8, would take it 5 minutes to get joined up at that slow speed. Then if you peel off, went away, it takes 20 minutes to get joined up again. So I called Douglas and told him I'd give him a free photo job if they just try it. And when they tried it, they saw how much we could do in an hour.
That changed air-to-air photography, and next came the technology to make it look good.
But in 1975, the Astrovision system, periscope system, was developed by Continental Camera Systems. and it revolutionized air photography. And being able to, the periscope can pan 360 degrees and tilt down for 45 or up 45. So we have one periscope out the top, one out the bottom, and it gives you freedom of movement, not hitting any windows, and then we can fly at jet speed.
This technology led the way for high-flying, action-packed scenes in big Hollywood movies, and Clay was at the center of it.
I got tone, fire it!
Well, Top Gun was interesting, but it's not just all fun, it's a lot of work, because to get the shots they need, we have to figure it out ahead of time, and be very careful the way we brief it from a safety standpoint. But what I'll do, I'll draw pictures before I have the briefing with the pilot, side view, how we're going to start, the top view, and who's going to peel off or go first, and on my command. And then when in just a few seconds they're out of the scene, they're too far away.
Clay's movie credits also include Armageddon, Firefox,
Boy, is this a machine.
The Right Stuff, The Great Santini,
Take him into the sun, Barstool. Up, that's it. Watch your six. Watch your six.
and dozens more.
Well, the Great Santini, they had some scenes in there that were, pretty wild. They had some little tricks you do, like they had a scene in there where they had an airplane flying here. Two airplanes from the outside rolled in on their wingtip. Well, that's pretty hard to do, and so we do little tricks like I'll have them start here and roll out, and then we reverse print it. And it looks like they're really the ace of the base. They come rolling up right onto the wing. But then another thing we had to watch for, in those days, some of the engines in the Phantoms put out a little smoke. Well, when you reverse print it, the smoke goes up the tailpipe and it goes the wrong way. So we had to get airplanes that did the smoke, but it all worked out. It was a good movie.
In all, Clay is responsible for more than 3,000 projects of aerial cinematography. If you're watching an airline commercial, more than likely, Clay is the man behind it. Coming up, having fun in the sky. Clay Lacy has accomplished much in his 80 years, and most of those years have been shared with his wife Lois by his side. They met on a flight from LA to Vancouver. Clay was the co-pilot, Lois a flight attendant. And through those eventful decades, much of what Clay has done, Lois has been right there by his side. If you're among the lucky ones, Clay will take you for a ride in one of his beloved Lear 35 jets. On this day, count me lucky as he pilots us into the sky.
There is nothing more that Clay Lacy likes to do than get out on a beautiful, clear day and fly out over the Pacific. We're over the Santa Cruz Islands right now.
He can't help but smile as he takes the jet into his very capable hands. This is what his entire life has been about. At the controls, totally in command, and loving every minute of it. In what seems like seconds, we speed from Van Nuys Airport to the coastline, and he takes a scenic route. Then, like Maverick in Top Gun, he asks the Santa Barbara Tower for permission to do a flyby. Can't you just hear them saying,
Mustang, this is Maverick requesting flyby.
Negative, Ghost Rider, the pattern is full.
but he does it anyway, with permission. And we zip past the tower and we do a high-performance climb straight into the sky. Exhilarating.
The thing I'm the happiest about is I got into aviation. I loved it. I decided when I was 7, 8 years old what I wanted to do. I only worked outside of aviation 1/2 of a day when I was 13. I'm proud of that.
You could say that to log 50,000 hours at the controls means you have a passion to fly. But to Clay Lacy, it is more than passion. It is his life. It is who he is. He may not have been born with wings, but in his heart, he was born to fly. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carlos Amezcua. Good night.